To the webinar. I'm Ryan Holtz, and I'll be presenting Architecting Successful Information Protection Programs. So let's get started. On today's agenda, we're going to look at the structure of information governance. Then we'll move into a discussion about risk reduction. And then finally, we're going to talk about Broadcom's information protection suite of products and the architecture. All right, so about me, I've been in cybersecurity over 20 years, 9 years with DLP, started in support, moved into consulting, worked on several large companies, banks, insurance, healthcare. So I've had my CISSP for the last 5 years. I'm an animal lover, outdoor adventurer, and avid photographer. So you can see some of my dogs there. So let's get going with information governance. So every year we're having more breaches and data exposures. 56% of data breaches are due to employee negligence. And the cost of an insider threat incident this year is 15 million. That's up $6 million from last year's survey. And 96% of Americans say employee negligence is a contributing factor to data breaches. So what can you do to protect your organization's data and your customer data? You can start an information governance program. So what is information governance? On the right-hand side, we have information infographic of what information governance is comprised of. You can see we have the stakeholders, and these are the business units that the organization uses for running the business. We've got the IT department that manages the infrastructure, and then we have the other departments, legal and privacy, risk management. All these different departments have to work together to form the governance strategy and execute. So in the outer ring, we have unified governance, right? So that is the idea around the entire business, right? The unified governance is you're understanding what the business goals are, you're understanding the business processes, you understand the tools and the legal obligations involved. And so all of that comprises the unified governance and involves all the different groups in the organization. In the middle ring, in the center, we have the data lifecycle, right? So this is the whole life cycle of the data, from creating it, protecting it, using it, sending the data elsewhere, and then finally disposing of it, getting rid of it. Because all the data is that you keep that is personally identifiable or risky in some way could ultimately cost your company money in the form of litigation. So you need to understand the data, and you need to understand when it's useful, when it has value, and when it no longer has value for the organization, and how to get rid of it. So all of these different business units are involved with looking at the information governance model for the business, right? So the users in the line of business, they create the data, they give the value to the data, and they designate the retention policy for that data, and they communicate all of that to IT, and they share where that's visible, right? So then IT takes that, and they are able to put forward the technology needed to execute the strategy and make sure that the regulatory and obligations and legal obligations are fulfilled. And then security and privacy come in and look at the regulatory obligations and legal privacy obligations of the company and weigh in on the data as well. So legal is able to share what the obligations are with respect to any ongoing litigations or with respect to any regulations that the company is beholden to. And then finally, we have records management, right? This is the group in your organization that determines what the master retention policy is going to be, right? They work with legal and they understand what the legal obligations are as far as regulatory goes for each different area that the company does business. So once we have all of these groups working together, teams have to work together to define and build the strategy at this point. So what does that look like? Ooh. So once we have that strategy, then we look at risk reduction, right? So risk reduction is an iterative process that helps to reduce your overall exposure in the organization. And so here we have the privacy and security risk reduction model. And you can see on the left-hand side, we have more exposure. And as we work our way through the risk reduction model, our exposure decreases over time. And so it's an iterative process where we're refining our rules and policies to get the outcomes that we're looking for, thus reducing our exposure. So what does that look like? First, we got to define the risk, right? So this is defined by the business units or the regulations that they're beholden to. So that this could be PII, this could be credit card data, this could be attorney-client privilege, this could be trade secrets, right? So you get to know what is of value to your organization so that you can define it properly. Once you define what that risk is, you need to find out where it is. So you have to identify where those repositories are and how that data is being stored there and how you can access it. So once you've located the targets, then you create your policies looking for this type of data. So you're looking for your personally identifiable information or your regulatory obligations, GDPR or PCI. So you create these policies, and then once you create the policies, you activate them and you validate the incident output is what you're expecting from the policies. If it's not, then you need to go back and review the rules that you set up in the policy and refine them so that you're eliminating false positives and only seeing true incidents. So ultimately, this is also involved with quarantining and disposition. So all data ultimately will die at some point. And so that reduces your risk once the data is no longer in possession by your organization. So now we have an understanding of risk reduction. Where do we go from here? Step one, we designate the information governance program leadership, right? So we have to start, your organization needs to bring in and fund, empower a task force so that this task force can come up with the strategy that's going to fit your organization. You need to have people from each different business unit involved with this task force. And the task force is going to look at all the business processes that are involved in the business and look at where there are opportunities for optimization. And then once they have this idea of everything that's involved, they'll draft up the the first draft of the information governance strategy. Then from there, step two, we're going to start creating or improving the information governance process. So what does that look like? The information governance committee reviews all the policies and procedures and around the disposition of data, right? So this is your classification. This is your internal nomenclature for your data. And so understanding what those obligations are and what the data is, then we start to write the policies and the procedures that govern the data moving forward, right? So then we have something written down, and the ultimate goal is we want to have all of this be automated ultimately, so that there are no manual steps involved, that the data is protected automatically based on policy and classification and process that you have in place in your organization. That gives you the best defensible legal position and allows you to get the most out of your data. So once you have that strategy written down and you've got everything in place, you've got to execute, right? You can't just publish the policy. You need to actually implement it. You need to go back and talk to your strategies, and talk to the strategies amongst the business units, and make sure that they're all in agreement and that we have the common outcome goal that we're looking for. And so IT can come in and recommend different technologies that can meet the capabilities that are needed in the strategy. Ultimately, IT is going to be implementing it, and it's best to have a single vendor that is able to support as many capabilities as possible. So once you've identified who these possible vendors are, you need to execute. So you got your people, process, and policies in place, and then you need to build it. So here are some of the processes. These are communication processes that each different organization is going to be involved with, possibly. So on the left-hand side, we've got your different business units. On the right-hand side, we've got IT. And so it's a constant back and forth between IT and the business units. The business units give feedback on the outcomes that IT is presenting them so that they can be refined, and that the overall processes are going to facilitate the business moving forward. So once we understand these processes, we have to look at the overall governance maturity model, right? It's not a straight line to go from having no information governance to, a fully executed, automated organization. That's the goal, right? But it's not a straight line to get there. There's many steps that you have to go through along the way. In the beginning, when you're at level 1, you don't have a lot of security in place. You've got siloed organizations, and your security is not consistently deployed across all business units. So in level 2, we're still siloed, and we're doing everything manual, right? So we start to look at, maybe we're using the same methods, we're using the same, we're storing places in the same similar places, but that's the extent of it. Level 3, we're getting more unique processes in place, and everyone in the organization is starting to use it, but they're still siloed in their different business units. In level 4, we have full integration between all the business units, and everything is automated as much as can be. So that's automation of the classification of the data, the classification of the content, and We have regular metrics that we are achieving and reporting on. So now that we have an overview of what's entailed for information governance, let's take a look at what Broadcom's bringing to the table. So we'll take a look at our architecture. So some things to consider about architecture. Before you design your application, you need to know how important this application is to your organization. What is the time to recovery in the case of an outage? Do you get top priority? So that is needed to understand so you can build your disaster recovery plan, right? You need to know how many people are gonna work on this application. Is it just the group of engineers that are standing everything up and having to do remediation? Or do you distribute the remediation efforts out to the business units? So that's important to know so that you can design the architecture to meet the needs of your remediation team. Are you gonna have an on-site DBA, right? Is your DBA gonna have backups? Are you gonna do cold backups or hot backups? Are you familiar with restoring? Do you need redundancy? How big is it gonna grow? Have you planned for your peak traffic with email flows, right? If you don't have enough servers in place, you're going to have data that gets out that's not inspected. Are you going to use an endpoint agent? Is your workforce distributed? Are they working from home? Do they connect on the VPN? Do you need a cloud solution? Is your organization using SaaS applications? And do you need to protect that data? So all these questions, lead to the overall architecture. So here's Semantics data loss prevention solution. On the left-hand side, we've got data loss prevention core, and on the right, we've got data loss prevention cloud. The core products is the traditional DLP on-prem deployment of DLP. You've got your database, we've got your endpoints connecting, we've got your storage and network looking after your web and email. We include image recognition, which is OCR and form recognition. And we also include information-centric analytics, which is our risk analytics platform for DLP. On the right-hand side, we've got the DLP cloud prevention, which really is powered by the cloud detection server. And that connects to the CASB offering for SaaS and IaaS, as well as the CASB gateway. And then we also connect into DLP Office 365 for Gmail or Gmail and the WSS. So this gives you a really complete protection across multiple channels and improving your visibility across your whole organization. So looking at the DLP architecture, we've got your traditional on-prem components in the lower portion of the screen. We have the heart of the DLP servers, the Enforce server, which is connected and powered by the Oracle database. We see all the policies and incidents are connected out to all the different detection channels that we have. We've got data in motion on the left-hand side, where we've got email and web monitoring, as well as raw network data. We've got DLP for endpoints on the right-hand side, where we have Discover, where we're able to look at the laptop's data and also prevent from blocking copying over USB. DLP for storage is our Discover, where we're able to search file repositories and databases. And then information-centric analytics is looking at all this incident data and connecting to the Enforce server. So you're able to do remediation through the information-centric analytics server, and that writes the data back to the Enforce server. On the top half, we have DLP Cloud. And so, like I said, that's powered by the Cloud Detection Service. So each Cloud Detection Service can connect to a different channel. We have one that connects to our Cloud Proxy web security service. we have one that connects to our DLP cloud service for email that will inspect your O365 or your Gmail traffic. And then we also have one that connects to CASB. And CloudSock CASB has two main components to it: the securelets, which connect to your SaaS offerings over APIs, and the gatelets, which detect the data inline so that you can block the data before it's uploaded to the web. So when we're considering our overall DLP architecture, that is just a piece of the whole network information security platform, right? This is our whole secure service edge offering, or formerly known as SASE. So this is where we're able to look at the data, apply zero trust network architecture to your user base, and allow for complete segmentation of your user's experience. So this allows them to access all the data that they need to for their corporate obligations for their work, and while still being protected, right? We've got web isolation in there that's protecting users from going to malware pages. We've got data loss prevention, inspecting the traffic and the content of the traffic. That's tied into the CASB, which is also inspecting the data, the content of the data. We're doing URL and threat protection and classification through the web isolation and the mirror gateway. And that's also, we're doing malware analysis in the sandbox as well. Our WSS agent also offers a cloud firewall service. And of course, we're using Secure Access Cloud for our zero trust network access in this architecture. All of this data is fed into the global intelligence network, which Broadcom has. That's the largest in the world. And so that real-time intelligence is then fed back out to the suite of products that uses it. And we're able to give real-time analytics better than any of our other customers, other competitors. So, are there any questions? I don't have any more to present. Oh, sorry. I want to talk about ANI. So who's ANI? So we were founded in 1999, headquartered in Atlanta. We partnered with CA in 2003. In 2018, we became a tier 1 partner. And so we're now strategic and expert advantage partner. So solution areas that ANI can help with for your organization involve DLP, CloudSock, CASB, the web security service, information-centric analytics, secure access cloud, semantic endpoint protection, endpoint management, proxy SG, semantic messaging gateway, and data center security. So we can bring all those products to your organization. So our core capabilities, we are available for POCs, health checks, thought leadership, architecture, design, implementation, configuration, migrations, upgrades, support, education, and more. So that's who ANI is, and we are here to help you. That's all I have today. What kind of questions do we have, Cami? Do we have any?
No, I don't see any at this time, Ryan. We can wait just like a few seconds here to see if anyone has any questions. Just a reminder that if you guys do think of questions afterwards, feel free to reach out to us as well. It looks like we do have a question. One second, let me pull it up. This person wants to know, can you give more info on securing cloud apps, like for Salesforce?
Sure. So Salesforce is, let's go back here. So Salesforce is one of the applications that we connect to with our CloudSock CASB. So we integrate through the API and also with the gatelets. So if you if your organization is using Salesforce, we're able to inspect the content in the files that you're uploading into Salesforce. And that's using all the policies that you have in your enforce server. So that just applies that those policies, like you're looking for social security numbers or credit card data, content in the files. We are able to inspect that data as it's going up into the cloud before it reaches the cloud using the gatelets. That's the inline protection. And the API, the securelets, that's after the data gets there. So if you upload your data into Salesforce, then Salesforce keeps a list of all that new data, and then the Cloud SOC comes in, checks that list, and goes and scans the new content that's been uploaded to see if there's any violations of policies.
Okay, great. Thanks, Ryan. Also, what about Salesforce and ServiceNow? Same question. Can you touch upon that a little bit?
So DLP does integrate with ServiceNow. That is new as of DLP 15.8. That allows for a remediation workflow that you can do where you can have incidents sent via ServiceNow to the user's manager. And there are remediation links inside the email. So the manager can remediate the incident directly from ServiceNow over email. And all of that will then be written back to the DLP console. So you don't have to get you don't have to have a separate remediation team. That you can push out that right to your business unit managers so that they can handle the remediation directly.
All right, thanks. We have a couple more questions here. Can you speak more about the DLP WSS intervention? What is achieved with DLP and WSS?
Sure. So WSS is our web security service. It's our cloud proxy. It's a SaaS offering. There is an agent that is deployed to a user's machine, and the agent then connects to the cloud proxy. The cloud proxy then you're able to configure just like an on-prem proxy where you can block certain types of content. You're able to filter malware out of different content streams, but we're also able to feed the web browsing traffic through the cloud detection server so that the content of the web browsing session is inspected using the policies that you have from your enforce server. So we're able to then push out the DLP enforcement to the edge for the HTML and HTTPS traffic with using web security service.
Okay, great. And it looks like we have one more question. Can we prevent people or roles from removing sensitive data from cloud-based applications?
Can we prevent people from moving data in cloud-based applications?
Yeah, like removing sensitive data from cloud-based applications.
So yeah, when you inspect the content that's going up to the cloud, you can, some of the CASB response rules that you have, you're able to restrict the sharing on it. So you're able to remove that feature from the file so that it can't be shared in that way. That's a response rule that you can have within CASB. So yeah, with that respect, you can remove the sharing.
Gotcha. I don't see any other questions at this time. If anyone does have any final questions, now's your chance. Please type them into the Q&A box. But Ryan, any last words while we wait to see if there's any questions?
No, I really am passionate about information governance. I feel like it's the heart of any DLP program. And, the technology is really 10% of the show. The other 90% of the show is all the people process So once you have that in place, the technology part is easier to tackle once you understand what the business needs are. So thank you so much today for having me, and there we are. Thank you.
Thanks, Ryan. We actually got one more last question.
Okay.
How long is the typical startup of DLP initiative?
That's a great question. Typically, what we have seen is that it takes at least 6 months to a year to really get your DLP program going. Deploying the technology is really easy. You could have a whole DLP deployment with servers and stuff done in a week's time, but the big part of it is the people and the processes, your information governance, right? So that part takes the most, because you have to work between all the different business units, and in my experience in business, that can be challenging at times, because each business unit has their own goals and outcomes that they're looking for, and oftentimes they're conflicting. So yeah, 6 months is really the amount of time that you'd need before you start putting policies in place, and start tweaking the policies. You take a baseline first. You look at what your whole landscape looks like, and start doing some basic discovery policies before you're able to start paring down and understand what your environment looks like, what the traffic in your environment looks like, and how you can have the data focused down to what's important to your organization. So after a year, really, that's where you really have a good baseline of what your cycles look like, and you're able to start being more specific and tuning your policies for what the business needs are moving forward. Ultimately, you want to get to a state where you're able to block sensitive data from going out that does not impact the organization. But it's really hard to get to that state where you're having true positives, with a high degree of certainty that you're not blocking traffic that shouldn't be blocked.
All right, well, it doesn't look like we have any more questions, so we can go ahead and end it there. Thank you, Ryan, so much for your time, and thank you everyone for joining. If you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to us at any time. Thanks everyone for joining. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye.